All right. Set my timer. Okay. So we just finished the tools track, and we've heard wonderful things from Ruth and Bruce about policy, and now I want to continue the theme that we started in the tools panel about the difference between work-related policy and personal AI policy, and what the difference is there. That's really what I want to focus on in our time here. And again, thank you, Matt, for the intros. Hi, panelists. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I want to start the conversation. Sorry, guys. So the policy conversation is going to continue, and I want to continue the idea, the theme of like personal versus business AI policies, where our focus is currently and where it might need to shift. So I'd like to go down the line and ask you all, can you give us one quick idea of what you personally are focusing on or watching in AI policy right now, and whether you consider that focus to be personal, business, or both? And I'll start with Ruth.
Well, I think, as I just confessed, that my personal time bleeds into my professional thing. So I'm answering emails at 2 a.m. So I'm trying to reestablish that barrier between my personal use and using it rather to perfect my communication with students, so that it would be nice to be able to have that assistant to say, if you're trying to get an answer after some cutoff, some reasonable time, then ask the personal assistant. Don't ask the professor, because the professor is tired and needs some rest.
Hey all, thanks for being here this afternoon. I love that you're here. No, really, I love that you're still here. Here's why. Come on, wait a minute. These are, first of all, these good people, these developers, right? DevOps, DevSecOps. Come on, who are many DevSecOps people, not just DevOps? Okay, a couple of hands, come on, thank God. I'm the second guy who identified today as a lawyer. Okay, so great question, Brittany. The question, or the response to me really is that we've never had a time like this. And everybody they talk to ask what AI tools they're using. Let those real people, right? Like, you're the special ones. You're the DevOps. You got to get everybody to use every AI tool you can. Tell them don't be afraid of it. Tell them to jump on board. And I agree. Who was it? Somebody said hallucinations. It might not be the right term, because you're right. It's an asset. It's a tool. It's no bug. But as a lawyer who jumped on 3 and 3.5 and now 4, 4.5, I can't get enough of my lawyers to start using it. They're all afraid, and they're old school. They're sitting on old school ivory towers saying that's not the way it's supposed to be. There are the teachers who are leaving in droves. My God, people, don't let them do that. Brittany, I'm not trying to hijack your question. I love you for the question. Yeah. I'm going to pass this on to the next person, but I'm glad you're here. I'll beg you, ask some questions to this panel. I mean, you got them here at this point, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So I think I can shed some light on what we are doing at Kwaai in terms of our focus on the policies with respect to whether on the corporate AI or on the personal AI. So as you would have heard right at the beginning, these PII tools that we are making, the open source PAI system, the operating system that we are making. So it essentially needs a contract with your personal AI that can effectively integrate to the corporate AI, your employers in most cases. So I think that's the focus for us right now. And what we are trying to do is evolve that framework, how both the tools can coexist, because right now there is nothing that the employee gets from any of the AI that employers use. So all the work, all the skills, everything that is being done at the workplace does not benefit the employee in any manner. And the whole intent of this personal AI is that when we go with our own tools and when we have these policies in place, then that will help the employees get some benefit from what they have contributed to the organization. There would be clear rules, clear, transparent direction in which both agents will be able to interact, both on the employer side and on the employee side. So I think that's the key focus for us for now. Corporate, yes, there are things which are going on, but our focus is on the personal AI. Over to Sam.
And if I pick up on the tools line there, I mean we've been using tools for a very long time, whether it's hammers and screwdrivers and so on. I think AI is similar. And if you think about it like kind of transhumanism and being able to extend your capability, it means that you can either do more work in the same or less time, or as an employee you can hire less people, right? But where it starts to get difficult, and I think for a lot of us our work does blend into our play. If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. But if you're starting to bring, I think lawyers and coders and so on are quite creative, right? We're writing code and we have
Lawyers and coders are quite creative. Yes.
and maybe that's a bit contentious, but we bring our knowledge, our algorithms, our snippets and so on, and we naturally use them. We store them up here and we use them as part of our work. But to the extent the company can start to take over that, right? If your TA starts to answer the questions well enough, well, it's like, why do I need the teacher, right? So, and that's where one of the really fundamental questions here that we need to kind of address is, where's that line? When you work for a company, typically you work for hours, you're paid by the hour, and your output is owned by that company, right? And you wouldn't begrudge a company for training an AI like a copilot, a coding copilot, on the company's own code base. Right, but where does that kind of, and it's going to be necessarily messy, right? It's not going to be black and white, it's going to be quite gray.
Great, thank you everybody. That was great input, I appreciate that. Mark, I'm actually going to skip to you, because I think, Sushil, you actually answered my next question. I love that you're focusing on personal AI, that's where it should be. Good job. Mark, my question for you is, should AI regulation concern itself on the data security level or the user experience level? Is one more important or vital to privacy or security of the individual than the other?
That's a great question. Thank you. We need both of those pieces for real, for sure, right? I heard about Kwaai, I don't know, a little while ago, a couple of months ago maybe, and I'm really glad I heard about it because have you watching and been listening earlier today? We have an opportunity to let people understand that maybe for the first time ever, they can get back in control of their data. The first guy that came up it wasn't Willis, but was it Doc Searles? Well, first of all, does he have a church? I want to join the Doc Searles. What? Are you kidding me? He put up the slides, all those privacy. Oh, you feel like when you go through the privacy policy, selections, the corporations are interested in having you believe that you're being protected, that you can be safeguarded now. Just say, I only want the essential cookies. Well, there's still cookies. There's still cookies. My mom used to say that, Mark, there's still cookies. So we can't succeed to move forward without an understanding that what matters as consumers and users, UX, it has to be familiar and comfortable for me. There's a little Henry in the background. I see him right there, right? It's got to be good for Henry, man. It's got to be good for all of us. But at the same time, switching the other handle, there's Doc. Now, look at that. He showed up right in at the perfect time. We're going to join your church. I'm going to lead the charge because without you keep talking about it, where would we be? So we got to hold the corporations accountable. So we need our UX to be good because the consumers need it. But without not just DevOps, but without DevSecOps, we're going to be in a little world of hurt. But we can't let the consumers be scared about this, but we got to really be with open eyes, recommend everybody out there that this is real. You can capture your privacy. How you do it is specific, but not doing it is a disaster. Does that help? Does that answer the question
yes.
a little bit? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
And Ruth, as an educator, do you feel educational policy is personal-based or business-based? And does it depend on the actor?
Okay, I wasn't looking forward to this question because some of my bosses might be listening. I'm thinking of Doc's pyramid with the psychopaths at the top, and I'm somewhere I think the students are at the bottom, and I'm somewhere in the middle. Were they sociopaths? Oh, some kind of.
I think things are your boss.
Oh, yeah. Some crazy people at the top, who have different objectives to the people that are actually in the classrooms doing the teaching. We're concerned with equity. We're concerned with DEI. We're concerned with not just teaching them the facts and figures that's on our curriculum, but sending them off to be productive people in society. And many educational institutions now are run on a corporate model, that the students are customers, and that's not working so well, I don't see.
Okay. Sam, as an engineer, how realistic is it in implementing regulation in the programs themselves, in these AI tools themselves? Is it realistic, even if we manage to come to an agreement on certain regulations, how we can implement them?
Yeah, so look, I think for the first thing is, for the first time ever, we can actually build a lot of this stuff, right? So we can actually build on top of a foundational model that knows how to speak English, or maybe it knows how to speak accounting with the GAP principles, or maybe it knows how to speak legal, trademark law, for example. And then you can build on top of that. Now, you do have to be a bit careful that stuff like the Virginia Woolf, quote, doesn't end up in your foundational model or pop out, or your previous courses. But to kind of segue into that specific question about being able to implement regulations, right? The problem there was kind of an access control failure, it was a security failure. And in a past life prior to, I used to work for Google, but before that I worked around Google, and we had a thing called the Google Search Appliance, which doesn't exist anymore. And what it would do, and this relates to what John alluded to before about the RAG, the retrieval, augmentation, and then generation. You can take these models, you can fine tune them, which is a lot of hard work, and it doesn't necessarily work very well. But what you can also do is you can augment, you can kind of add, you can mix in the results of a database query. And the database could be your email, or it could be a PDF, or it could be a whole bunch of different sources that you're pulling the data in. And if you don't have the security clearance to access those documents, or if you did have them but then you lost it, right, then you just don't mix it in when you generate the response, and then that thing is not visible anymore. And that can be done in real time, and you kind of, at the time you could see the results pop up as it determined whether or not you had access. So yes, not only does the technology now for the first time enable us to build these tools, like the personal AI, the Pi system, but it actually allows you to enforce security at a very, very granular level.
That's really exciting. Mark, did you have something?
No.
All right, fine.
I said good.
So I have one more question for Sushil, and then we have about 5 minutes for audience questions. I forgot to mention that the microphone for questions is over there. Please participate. We want to hear what you have to say. That's what the Kwaai community is all about. It's not about the 5 of us up here. It's about everyone in the room. So we'd love to hear what you have to say if you have any questions. But Sushil, it's really exciting that we have the tools to implement policy these days. But it doesn't really, I'm curious what are some of the challenges facing policymakers today with like the complexities of AI, like in the communication layer and the technology layer, and what's your experience with that?
I think it's a great question, and I'll probably pick up from what Pankaj mentioned in his keynote. And I think the 2 key takeaways are, one, the pace at which the technology is advancing. So the steep curve, even after like 70 years, it has been there. But now that with the Chat GPT and everything that we have seen, so that's one part, the pace at which the technology evolves. And second is the global scale at which it does. So it's not like confined to a particular set of global location. It's all over the world. So that's the big challenge. So rather than the technology or any complexity of just the system itself, it's more about how it is happening. So the pace and the location. And for those two, how do you regulate the policies? Because and I'm talking of the developing countries like India, so the policies evolution is very slow. The people are just not educated. And we have some of our members that work on our working groups on the policy track. So from Europe, so even over there, like developed countries, the structured democratic dialogue process that they follow, even that is like, very difficult to engage people to come to that level of, level setting and having those regulatory policies in place. So I guess those are the big challenges that we need to see. And in terms of solution, so a couple of solutions, I think. One is definitely the education and outreach, which is what at Kwaai, we are, passionate about. That's what we are trying to do. Engage more and more people, get the education, dissemination, and make sure that in those ways that people understand that they use the AI tools, and that's where the personal AI also comes in. So I think outreach, education is one part, and then on behalf of the governments and even like academia and other, say the non-profit organizations, it's more about like rallying together, engaging with different stakeholders so that regulatory framework can really be evolved. Because corporate AI, we've talked about, personal AI, definitely the most important part for us. So I guess if we look at that time, that overall frame in which we need to operate, so those complexities is what we need to look at. I think that's the view that I would have on this one. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so any questions from the audience? All right, we got some.
I have a question for Ruth, which is, literature is very important to me. I always love seeing the intersection with tech. And in your presentation, one of the student examples you showed, the one at 4 a.m, saying, hey, I read through the syllabus, am I waiting for my book? Is there anything else I need to do? To me, that just spoke of such massive anxiety. And, it's very unhealthy being up at 4 a.m, trying to hyper optimize that. How do you see this changing your relationship with the students? And
That's an excellent question.
And do you see this as something that would also support the more less academic but more mentoring aspects of teaching? And how do you see that relationship changing over time?
It is an opportunity to reach students where they are, not where they're at, where they are. So yes, you do recognize that after a few years doing this, you do recognize that when a class starts, there's always somebody who says, oh, I've got a question. Oh, and you answer that question. And just one more question. And then they overthink and they have so much self-doubt and anxiety that when they actually hand in the assignment, it's just fine. I'm dealing with one right now who will email me 6 times a day, and the work is fine. But you have to learn how to navigate that. And I think having these extra tools will make it easier to do that. Because if you're just in the classroom and you've got no tech, then you miss so many opportunities to connect with those people.
Great question, thank you. All right, who's next?
Okay.
Hi, Adrian.
I'd like to do that. I'm a middle child, and my younger brother having a 380, and he's also a 380 and to be a so what would you advise me to do with AI? People listening.
All right. This is for all of you, really. Thank you, Adrian.
Adrian.
The Fourth Amendment comes into play here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not forget about that, right? Government agencies and the government, illegal search and seizures. We have the right to be protected safely so that our goods and our information, our data isn't freely given. So be mindful as we develop personal AIs. Again, come and join us. We need your voices in this. It's critically important. So I'm conflicted to love lawyers more or cops more, but only because there's 1,000 other categories of people that I love too. So, but I wanted to say, Fourth Amendment, don't forget it. Our privacy is mission critical. If we create an AI and we have the authority and we think we're going to give all of my own information to my own personal assistant, am I going to tell it everything? Like, I need to be able to delete some of that stuff. Just like a cool resume, I want my personal AI to be customizable. I want to be able to make sure I'm giving the information I want to give out. So I'm asking your brother, who's going to go be a lawyer, be a lawyer for a while before you decide to be a cop. How's that for an answer? That's what I'm going to ask you. But get this away from me.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I have a question for Ruth and Mark, but I believe your answer may affect all of us. So, what you showed us today, in that scenario, suppose with this AI tool, if you can also have your voice along with everything else, will it be possible for you to be doing multiple lecturing at multiple places or multiple locations and multiple universities? 1 second, because the reason I asked that, last November, I had an incident where a person was doing multiple jobs using AI, and we couldn't catch him. The only reason it happened in Navy, we caught him because in DoD, where all of us get issued a CAC card. And when we went, after 3 months in the job or 2 months in the job, we went for validation of the CAC, or getting a CAC. We discovered that he already had one and working in another department of the Navy. So now there's no such thing happening in private organization. So, I mean, this poses a challenge, but I don't know whether it's a good or bad, but your thoughts on it and what's the legal framework behind it?
Right, so check out 11 Labs. You absolutely can do it in real time now.
Yeah,
You can generate some results.
right. That's exactly what happened.
Well, did you
Thank
not
you.
notice that my assistant had a British accent?
That's what I was trying to get. Yeah.
I'm not sure which British accent she had. It wasn't mine, but it was something.
Right.
She started in Bristol and she went up to Birmingham a little bit. I'll turn that around a little bit. Yes, it can be done, but when we've done roundtables at my college with students, they say we don't want to be taught by. We want to be taught by the professor. We don't want too much personal assistant. We don't want some robot teaching us. So that's the other thing that we need to be careful of, that it still needs to be professor content.
Yeah, but if you're giving lectures and you bring in holograms and everything, I mean, there's no way to differentiate.
Well, if you're teaching online, and teaching an asynchronous class, yes, you could be teaching all over the place.
Yeah.
And the students are just logging in whenever at 4 o'clock in the morning.
So this WFM or work from home and other things, I mean, this is where we are going to, or perhaps heading towards maybe.
Yeah, it brings up some ethical issues. And
Yeah,
it brings up
okay. Thank you.
Rights to your own personality and voice and appearance and so on. Like, can a company take your persona and employ you?
Right, exactly.
All right, before we go
let's
down
think
that,
about those things. Just
before we
think
go
about
down that rabbit hole, I
All
want-
right, we're already running like that is a rabbit hole. I love that.
Yeah.
We have one more question here. We're gonna kick Kai's presentation off at 4:45. Or sorry, not that late. 3:45. We're gonna kick Kai's presentation off at 3:45. Time for one more question here. Super quick break, and then we'll get it. We'll get the next section going.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name's Nathan, and I work as a technologist, data, AI, DevOps, the center of it. But I love this panel because my mother was an English comp teacher, and she was one of those that retired because of all the AI stuff coming through. But my wife is an attorney who does white collar defense too. So as I'm thinking about this, and we have technologists here, so I always think of, well, what happens when something goes wrong? And we're talking about policy and regulation, but there's also that other enforcement, justice system piece of that. So my read on it is, people say this is the Wild West, things are growing so much, but they're really not. This is continued, technology evolution, right? And so what happened in this Wild West when airlines are putting agents out there that are promising free tickets and people are, doing this or that, and we're having educators being enterprising and saying, hey, we've got a chat assistant, but maybe that assistant gets something wrong. And the university system, there's a grievance process, right? Or go to you and be like, whatever, AI assistant. But when we're talking about millions of customers out there, some Wild West, the question for the panel here is, we have the current system of regulation, and I think regulators are like, things are moving so quick, we don't want to put regulations in that's going to squash innovation. So what do you guys think about that? How that tail end would work when something's wrong, so it's not an industrial accident when something happens or people are this or that or free tickets. What does that world look like of regulation, and so that there's fairness in outcomes when something doesn't go right?
So I think I can maybe start, then Sam can chip in. A couple of things that I can think here. One is the maturity of the technology that we are using. So right now, as was again mentioned by one of our speakers, that right now it's like marketing or consumer orientation. That is what is the focus right now for most of these tools. So in those critical, life impacting, life threatening situations, the AI tools are not really, the technology is not, being relied to that level. So that's one part, and that will continue to evolve with time. Second thing is that it has to be like more adaptive regulatory framework evolution also, as we put in the AI tools in more and more different functional areas. So I guess the governments, and supported by the different lobbies and the organizations. So I think that ecosystem has to pretty much also pace up, and AI can help in that also. So I think it's going to be interesting, and it needs to be more collaborative and adaptive is what comes to my mind, to just be on top of where we really need to be. Sam, any other thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on the context. And John Willis got into this before. He said you have to create the right tool for the job, right? So when it goes wrong, somebody dies. Okay, if you look at the grade of automation of the Paris metro system is GOA 4, but like I just got a Tesla with FSD, and it's the full self-driving is GOA 2 or 3. And if you're not there hanging onto the wheel when it makes a mistake, right, then you've got you could end up in trouble, or somebody else, right? Now they're upgrading that now from a whole lot of kind of more like an expert system of hand cut, I think C++ code, to a neural network. And the next, I think it's FSD version 12, is moving to an AI-based system, which is in many ways better than the system that was there before, particularly when it finds things that don't match any of the rules. So we're going to ultimately be better off, I think, by using these AI systems. But if you're going to deploy it in an operating room, it's like, do you cut the red or the purple? You want to get that stuff right. You don't have time to go and read the manual, but you need to train your systems and have controls in place to make sure that they're appropriate for the application. Maybe if you give the wrong answer on an English essay, nobody's going to die, hopefully. So you might have a different, more creative, kind of allow more. You have a different type of AI that you need to deploy.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for that question. That was great. Panelists, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. It is Kai's turn to have the talking stick.